Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. I know what you conniving. Money, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. You can keep your conniving money when you've been a corrupt. There be money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bills there be money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Never, never joke, never, never joke. Never, never joke. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a kill the piece. A 2 pound note and a kill the piece. A 2 pound note and a kill the piece. That's all the money that me walk for. I said money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph for me.
Ravens, we taking over!
Hi sporting fans, it's here. Club Twilight is now open. Check us out on Sideline Dan north side of the public road. All weekend, starting 6 o'clock this evening. 4 banks beer, $1,000. 5 GT beers, $1,000. Come and enjoy a spanking new and comfortable atmosphere. Popular music and popular DJs. Cutters on fleet. Yes, Club Twilight, your new entertainment zone. Sideline Dam, Buxton North. Come out and have a blast from 6 o'clock this evening. The weekend has started.
Ravens, we taking over!
buy sorrel. You know, sorrel comes into the season coming close to the Christmas. And so I went there to African Guyanese vendor and asked her how she was selling the sorrel. And she told me $100 a parcel or something like that. Very small parcel and so on. So I said to her, if I bought $1,000 worth of it, whether you throw in a little what we call boxes, you know, as a kind of business strategy consumer to the seller. And the lady proceeded to tell me how, no, she can't do that because how much money is for a bag of sorrel. And she had to go to canal number 1 to buy this sorrel and all this kind of stuff. The lady, you know, that's a very strange business strategy that you have. I mean, would you prefer to have this sorrel later to this afternoon or having to come back tomorrow and sell them rather than having a practice that suggests, you know, somebody comes buying $1,000 worth of it, that's 10 parcels gone, all you're doing is throwing it, so on. And I said to her, from where did you do you hail? And she said, from Buxton. And I said, you know, that is interesting that you're coming from Buxton and going to canal number 1, number 2, Liverpool on the West Demerara to buy a bag of sorrel to come to Border Market to resell it. I said, you know, this is, I said it's hard to digest, really, because I know Buxton is a village back in the day that was known for its agriculture, known for its fruits. You know, and I mean, sorrel is not a heavy. I plant sorrel in my yard with a hand plant, but sorrel grows in my yard. And in Christmas, we rip enough to make a couple of jugs of drink. So I don't know that there's a big technology in sorrel. But the point I was making is, if you really want to empower yourself and have and talk about wealth and talking about income and so on, we have to have these programs where people move from retailers into producers, right? They move from retailers into producers. And so programs like RAID that will open those backlands and put in the infrastructure and so forth, and that will give them the extension services that they will require for plants and so on, and will give them the post-harvest assistance to make certain that they find the markets and so that they can become viable and maintain their status in the community, or raise the status in the community. So I thought by way of some comments on this and so on, that while it's good in memory of a titan like Guyana, I think he will love to see the symposium continue, but that he will want to see us move beyond rhetoric into conservative programs of action. So by the time the next one comes around, you will have a part of the program that talks about the report card and the structuring of the new symposium to deal with either the report card or with issues that continue to be born in and so on. What do you think, Gida?
Of course, it's a practical recommendation, and even as you mentioned that, I reflected on the fact that when we were observing the occasion of Brother Yusi's 96th birth anniversary, one of the things he requested or was suggested and accepted by us all was that we were going to give out 96 plants in the Buxtonian community, one for each year. And that thing did not get stuck in Buxton, because communities all across this country, black communities, especially those that were touched by the brilliance and the exemplary conduct of Brother Yusi, requested that they too be part of this program. As I know for a fact, coming out of the 96th birth anniversary observances, there are lots and lots of plants around this country. I don't know if they name them UC Guyana, but there are lots of plants out there. And yes, those recommendations are practical, and I usually try as much as I tell people on my program. When I tell them to do things, it is things that I myself am willing to do, and perhaps I'm in an advanced state of doing. People who are around me will know that most of the recommendations I make, especially for economic survival, are things that I myself have tried or am doing. Just to reflect on that Sorrel story and the Raid Project, I must say, and I always tell people when they talk about the coalition not doing anything for black people, I refer those villages that the Raid Project were identified, the Raid Project was identified for and implemented in. Mocha is ahead of the curve right now as far as I understand. Mocha, with the help of a certain agriculturalist, has now gone to market with new and innovative products or product. I can tell you that they hold a frequent market day and so on. Buxton, on the other hand, Buxton had started producing. Lands were being taken up nicely. But the usual challenge with Buxton, as soon as the coalition, or perhaps even before the coalition was forced out of office, Buxton started facing some of the very challenges which had caused its productive capacity to dwindle. The farm to market road is a problem. When the weather is bad, you don't get in, you don't get out. Getting in is not as difficult or frustrating if you don't have crops at the back there. But when you have produce that is going to overripe and spoil, and you can imagine the frustration. And the Buxton farmers are seeing a whole lot of that. Even before the coalition was forced out of office, because I don't know if people know that the Raid Project to a large extent is one of your grandchildren.
That's correct.
You know that part of the component of that project was the agricultural machinery which should be stationed in the communities.
That's correct.
And overlooked or supervised by the Agriculture Ministry.
That was a novel feature to get around the problems that previous projects had, where they had to depend on the central government and to provide that kind of assistance. And even when it was forthcoming, it wasn't timely. It wasn't timely, and therefore the frustration. So to avoid the frustration, we structure the project in a manner where these pieces of equipment will remain in the community to be used by the community. And when it's not being used by the community, it could be rented to other communities to generate income.
Right. One of the problems Buxton faced very early on was that those pieces of equipment were removed. And I understand taken to a Borbis Indian community by people who were working out of the Ministry of Agriculture, more particularly the NDIA. Buxton has never gotten back those pieces of equipment. And so I was pointing out to somebody the other day, when this administration shouting that they're going to get them tracked in 30 minutes and so on, it's not that they were getting them tractor that doesn't belong to the village. They were simply going to replace the Raid Project tractor. But what about the other pieces of implements? Right? And these are things which, like I said, sometimes our leaders fail to highlight enough and fail to fight for hard enough. Because those pieces of equipment belong to the village as far as I know. And they're absent from the village. While our village farmers are suffering and, like you say, can't necessarily compete with other communities which have had the support of previous government without such interference. Right? And while the sister was saying, man, I can't do that because the profit is marginal on this bag of sorrel, trust me, I believe her. Trust me.
No, I believed her. I believed her. I think I was looking at the wider issue. Perhaps she, and again, as I said, that's where we have to take these things into stride and do something about them, right? I mean, she was there doing her hustle. I could imagine the plight of the black household and so on. But a little bit of education would see her buying two bags, that the rate of turnover, once the rate of turnover was faster, she was likely to get a bigger profit. You know, these kind of little small little things. These kind of small little things that we can impart in people. You know, they don't require any big set of science or any kind of thing. I absolutely agree with what she was saying, but all I'm saying also that she was competing also with the next door neighbor, an Indian lady, who obviously had bigger parcels and who was prepared to throw in a whole parcel and so on. Now, while she could not do that, she still has to compete with that other vendor or the other vendors down the road. And when they are packing up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock and going home with most or all of their stock gone, she's there well into the night. She's there well into the night trying to sell out a bag of sorrel. Now, just figure out, if she's a breadwinner, what is happening in her household in terms of if she has children at home, grandchildren, whoever else, who's looking after them. You know, if they're going to school, what is happening to their education? What is happening to their homework? You know, all of those kinds of matters come into play, you know, and that is why I'm pleading in this part where the symposium was concerned. I'm quite happy I was invited to the symposium. I'm quite happy to be able to participate, but when I participate and so forth, I always want to see some outcomes. You know, people mustn't just invite me because of a high-profile person or something to just come and so on. But there must be outcomes for which we can review after a certain period. We must be able to move on. You know, these fora are important for identifying, for advocating, and so on. But we also have to have other actionable policies, programs, and so on that we can implement to better or to improve the status that we are talking about. That is what I am going. So the lady, she should have a program in place, and that program in place was the sled program. And yes, that was another of my babies. Sled, I had many babies, and many of them I don't have to think them. I put them on the rubric of the coalition. As I not promoted myself, but this is coalition thing. But the SLED program that I indicated there was a program that I initiated, and it was designed to help these very small entrepreneurs overcome this whole issue about access to capital and access to intelligence. Access to intelligence, because you know sometimes you say you're going to buy a bag of golden apple and all spoiled. Well, you don't have the business intelligence to tell you that you're not going to buy no bag of golden apple and parcel them out 3 and 4 and hope to sell them out in one day. You know, and so on. So all those things we were trying to do: mentoring, tutoring, mentoring, basic business sense, and so on. That is what the SLED program was meant to do. Unfortunately, as you well know. You know. I want to give a shout out to it's not my friend, but he started in South Rhineville with the psycho Andrews from Andrews Supermarket, who has just opened another branch, which perhaps is his main branch now, at the old Nigel's Supermarket. I want to just caution the brother, because I see he big up a lot of people and so forth, which is good, right? Once you get help along the way, you can you must be able to give thanks and so on. But I want to caution the brother to examine closely why Nigel's Supermarket ultimately failed or was forced out of business. Ultimately, examine those factors and not to make the same or similar mistakes. He is in a very cutthroat business, and from the time he understands that, he must have his armor ready, his strategies and business sense put together to be able to counter whatever he's going to face in that business. But once there's positives from the Nigel's market that he has identified that he should emulate, and even surpass. And one of those positives was courtesy, customer care, friendliness, right? You could have gone into Niger supermarket and you got all of those. That's one thing about Niger supermarket. The customer friendliness and care and so on. And the staff there were super. I don't think you could have gone anywhere else in the private sector and had that level of friendliness and continuous, not put on, the continuous friendliness of the staff and the customer care that you got, right? I don't see that in any of the supermarket, to be quite honest, that they have around. Some of them try, but they don't rise up to where Niger's one. And so, Mr. Andrews, I wish you the best of success, right? You have already one strike. You're a black entrepreneur, right? So try to remove that strike. People know. Please do not fail. Please do not fail, because you are among the few black entrepreneurs that we can pinpoint. We can pinpoint as representative of the black entrepreneur. Okay, very few, and I hope you represent the rise in the black entrepreneur in Guyana. And so, whatever Ipadaji and Acton, all these people are contemplating, it has to be part of that. Has to be how to create black enterprise, how to sustain black businesses, how to improve black wealth, and so forth. Right? Can't depend only on the government. Not depend on the government. You know, I mean, we are also responsible for ourselves. You know, and that is what I try to put over at the symposium. I saw this morning, I woke up to the contents of a press conference that was held by Mia Motley. I'm not dealing with our press conference, but what I want to bring to the fore is something that I said on this program. The APNU said on their press conference and so forth, which is a cap in the prices for gasoline and diesel, and that the government bears the subsidy. The government bears the subsidy to cap the prices of gasoline and diesel, which are extremely important inputs into almost any facet of life. Any facet of life. And the government bears the subsidy. A mechanism could be worked out. Now here is Mia Motley, second time around as far as I'm concerned, announcing a cap on gasoline and diesel in Barbados until January 2023. Until January 2023. You will recall that Mia Motley, a few weeks ago, also took the suggestion that I made on this program, and I have been making since last year, that if you want to get rid of indirect taxes such as VAT and ensure that they quote-unquote trickle down to the consumer, you will have to engage in a contract with the businessmen for the pass-through to happen. That the pass-through is not going to happen automatically, if at all, if you didn't have this compact with the business people who providing these particular items. No, they didn't do it in Guyana, but Motley did it in Barbados. After long negotiations with the business community there, she was able to have a signed agreement with them to pass through the reliefs that she was given by way of indirect taxes. Now you tell me what it is that is wrong in Guyana, where because you don't belong to that party, or you don't belong, or you're so-called not favored with the government, that they refuse to listen to what is credible and sound advice. Tell me, and how do you how do you progress in a country? How do you progress in a country when one side believes they're the fountain of knowledge? One man believes he is Guyana, and the rest of Guyana can go to hell. What? You create enemies of your own people. You create enemies of your own people and decide that you're not dealing with enemies. Barbados listening to constructive proposals and are implementing. You don't want to listen because it didn't emanate from your kind of people or your people. And so we suffer here. We suffer here, even though we have far more resources than right now coming to us than Barbados can have. Barbados is still in an IMF program. We are not in an IMF program. So if Barbados in an IMF program can do those two things that we were advocating in this country, that we are not in an IMF program and we have massive sums of money coming to us, and these are not permanent measures that we are talking about. They're temporary. They're temporary measures that will be reviewed every so often, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, as the situation develops. But no, don't listen to Jordan, don't listen to APNU, don't listen to the coalition. They are anathema to progress, and then, of course, the rest of the community and the rest of the countries suffers, But, Kenaki, as you say, you have to soldier on. Is that so?
Definitely you have to. Definitely. Giving up is never the option.
Yeah, so quickly on the subject that you were talking about on the merchant banking as such, we had put it off last week, this week. I look at the two questions and so on that the guy had posed. They're very interesting questions. I hope that we can somehow deal with it in the way that he wanted it to. So this whole concept of merchant banking evolved from medieval merchants trading in commodities such as cloth. Cloth was perhaps the most important one. Hence, the original purpose of a merchant bank was to facilitate and or finance production and trade of commodities. So that's how you got the word merchant banking. So there's no big set of set of mystery there. However, merchant banking has evolved since that rudimentary approach grid, and it now refers to a financial institution providing capital to companies in the form of share ownership instead of loans. A merchant bank can also provide advice on corporate matters to firms in which they invest. Other activities of merchant bank will include issue management, portfolio management, credit syndication. Now, credit syndication is, for example, a loan provided by a group of lenders, such as the one procured for Gaisuku by Nisil. Remember the bond?
Yes.
The $30 billion that was procured?
Yes.
Well, that was procured via syndication of bonds, where a number of investors would have come together, including NIS, insurance companies, and all of them. They came together and pooled their money to break the bond, right? And the bond was syndicated to Republic. All right. So that's what syndication necessarily means. A group of investors together put in their money, and one person will Republic Bank. So that was a good aspect of syndication in Guyana that hopefully will be replicated. Merchant banks also accept credit, like type of letter of credit, authorizing payment on or after a specific date, once the terms of the letter of credit will have been met. And merchant banks could also counsel on mergers and acquisition, insurance, and so on and so forth. Merchant banks can help in processing loan applications for short and long-term credit from finance institutions. So they provide a range of management type services that ordinarily would not be available to the uninitiated or the investor or the entrepreneur who looking for capital but can't get from the regular commodity banks because they either don't have status or they don't have credit. And we'll, if time permits, we'll perhaps talk about credit or talk about the not or so on. Now, merchant banks could be public sector oriented, or they can be private sector merchant banks. Now, the last time I think I had said that the first merchant bank in Guyana was the DFL. But actually, on reflection, when I looked at it, DFL SA out of Trinidad and Tobago was more like a private sector development bank, if the two terms can go together. But the first merchant bank, the first and only merchant bank up to the time that this new merchant bank came into Guyana, was called the Guyana America's Merchant Bank. It still exists, but it's so nondescript, means that not many people know about it. In fact, in looking at the internet, all I find is Guyana America's Merchant Bank, but I don't find too much on it. But what I do know, it was established in 1995, and it got its license from the commercial bank around that time to engage from Bank of Guyana. It got its license from Bank of Guyana around that time to engage in merchant banking in Guyana. It's a subsidiary of the Guyana Bank for Trade and Industry, and it's housed in GBTI's headquarters in Kingston there. It's supposed to be providing investment banking, investment management, brokerage services, and so on. Now, as I said, I don't know much about the activities of the Guyana America's Merchant Bank. I couldn't find on the internet any report of its activities, and therefore I don't know what is its success rate, and so on. Perhaps it will wish to raise its profile by coming out from under the GBTI and coming out on its own and indicate exactly how it has fared so far. Although it may not name who are or were, and so on. It will talk about numbers of people it assisted in the areas and so on. So we get an understanding of where that is. Right? But merchant banks are another part of assisting in the deepening of the financial market. Now, this New Haven Inc. merchant is obviously the second merchant bank in Guyana. It was issued by the Bank of Guyana. It's the brainchild apparently of Guyanese Floyd Hinds, who hails out of Washington, D.C. And the bank was launched on July 24, 2022. Its head office presently is located at 304 Church Street, Georgetown, which previously housed the office of the opposition leader when Jagdeo was the opposition leader. So that's just by way of finding a way. There's no connection between. I'm not trying to put any connection between the bank and Jagdeo. It's just by way of those who want to find where the bank is. Then that is the marker where the leader of the opposition. Now they say they will be offering equity financing. That is giving financing to people who are willing to give up part of their ownership of the business in return for financing. You ever heard about Shark Tank?
Yes, it's a series I used to look at.
Correct. So the Shark Tank is another form. They're not a merchant bank, but they are like what you call venture capitalists. Venture capitalists. They are wealthy investors who are prepared to listen to ideas for startups or for business that already exists, and for people who want to sell those ideas in return for financing or for technical and managerial expertise. So, for example, I saw recently there was a startup of something ride, cab ride or something.
Book a ride.
Here.
Free advertisement this morning. Book a ride.
Book a ride. And by the way, congratulations to that sister who persevered. But I think she said she had a problem again with the issue of capital, finding capital, and every time they talk about accessing bank. When you go to commercial bank is not a development bank. A commercial bank is not a development bank. So don't talk about, if you go to the commercial bank, you have all these problems and so on. The commercial bank is holding your money and my money as depositors. Okay? A commercial bank is an intermediary. They intermediate between depositors and investors. So they take our money, our savings, my savings, your savings, everybody else's savings, and they lend part of it, not all of it, they can't lend all of it, lend part of it to investors and those who want to borrow and so on. But in doing so, they have to apply the strictest scrutiny and so forth. Okay? They have to apply that. They also have to make a profit so that they can continue in business and continue to track my savings. So they have to pay me some kind of interest that makes it worthwhile for me to continue banking with them. And of course, they provide another set of array of services and so on, all of which has to be costly. So when you go to a commercial bank, don't expect them to give you a 1% and a 2% lending. That is not what commercial banks are for. Their name is commercial banks.
Yes, but part of the challenge which you might have mentioned earlier is the lack of information, lack of education as to the differences of these banks and the availability of developmental banks. How many developmental banks are Guyanese really exposed to in this country? You just named, you just said this New Haven is the second merchant bank that is visiting this country. Guy Bank might have been a development bank. Which others do we have?
No, the merchant, and that is why. So let me just continue on this one.
Yes.
So the view that I was trying to put out there is that there are so many other sources of financing, albeit in Guyana they're not there. They're not there, but they still can be considered. Now, let us take the Book a Ride story. Now, that's a startup. Now, with this New Haven Merchant Bank, she could have gone to the New Haven Merchant Bank, because I don't know anything about Guyana America's Bank. As I said, I don't know anything about it. It has not made itself well known in the community. It will do that. I don't know what is their work or what. But assuming based on what Mr. Floridians had indicated at the opening, this Book a Ride, for example, could have gone to the merchant bank, discussed with them her proposal, and try to entice them into an equity partnership. So instead of her looking for a loan from the commercial bank or whoever is going to lend her, she could go for equity. And that means now that merchant bank will look at our proposal and says, damn, this is a good proposal, and begin to negotiate with her and say, listen, we are prepared, we as a merchant bank prepared to take 30% stake in the company in exchange for us putting up capital of, say, $100,000 US, which is 20 million Guyana dollars. And they can negotiate. I'm just giving you an example of what can happen. So right away, she has $20 million of quote unquote free money. Free money, because that is not a loan. New Haven Bank would have now taken a stake in our business. Okay? And the success of our business, right? The success of our business will determine the returns that the merchant bank gets, right?
And therefore, the possibility of our reaping a bigger fruit, if I can call it that, and our business succeeding is higher because merchant bank is going to bring more specialization and specialists and so on to the party, if I can call it that.
Correct. They're going to bring, well, that could be separate because remember, merchant bank is also in the business fees. They make a lot of their income from fees, okay? So while this may be one part of it, if they put in technical expertise, they may charge the business for it. If they put in managerial expertise, they may charge the business for it, right? Because most of merchant bank income come from fees and the returns they get from their involvement. But the important thing about the book right now is that they don't have the burden of interest and repayment of loan forming part of their expenditure structure. And so now they are able to put a competitive price out there and allow dividends and returns to go to the merchant bank. So this whole question of equity comes back here again to what we are calling a stock market. What we call a stock market will not pass muster in many places. And it's unfortunate because what is called a stock market today was actually put in place by the former PNC government. I think it was in the late 80s when Gwyneth was Minister of Finance, that steps were taken to study the establishment of a stock market in Guyana, and I can remember somebody coming out of UK, coming here to do the study, and so on. And I thought we missed an opportunity to really have that market go by not putting all the privatization entities. The entities, remember we privatized over 100-something entities over the last couple of decades. If we had put them up via the stock market, perhaps the ownership structure of many of those entities would have been wider, deeper, and it would have deepened the stock market, and it would have provided confidence of the alternative approach to financing in this country. Because clearly the commercial banks remain the go-to because of the wealth of money that they have. But you know who have more money than the commercial banks, I would think? Those who participate in the bank itself and those who don't. Because if like Bank CIH and like DDL who are on the stock market, like Bank CIH and DDL who are on the stock market, a number of companies, medium to large companies, who are crying out about going to commercial banks and having access problems, could list on the stock market through an IPO, an initial purchase offering, an initial public offering. They can do that and list on the stock market. And so you with your 5 cents on your bed, me with 3 cents and so on, we could look at this company and say, this company is an oil and gas company. It's going to service those FPSOs. You're going to have about 10 or 11 FPSOs out there over time. So this company is a gold mine. So I am prepared to invest in this company in return for a dividend. Okay? Now, what happens there? Several things happen there right away. That company has moved from Mr. XYZ family-owned business, struggling to have financing because they don't have the kind of access to the commercial banks, because banks can only lend up to a certain amount to a business. They can't overload, they can't overheat, and they can't overexpose. So, and then of course, businesses businesses dependence on their owners and on the family and all this kind of thing. That's a limitation to that. But now, if they're prepared to expand ownership of the business and move it from Mr. XYZ and family into XYZ company, they could retain the name, but now it's company. And it's not private company now, it's public company that where now you have a shareholders and board of directors. But you know what happened in Guyana? When you look at the ownership structure of businesses in Guyana, middle to large businesses in Guyana, when you look at the ownership structure, there are a bunch of family businesses who do not believe in others coming into their business.
True.
Despite the success of Banks DIH and DDL, if Peter de Geer was minded the same way, look at the vision of Peter de Geer. Look when he turned Banks DIH into a public company. Look as when he turned Banks DIH into a public company. Look since when. Yes, super sad. Look when he turned DDL into a public company. Look at their growth and success today. You hear them, both of them, as a matter of fact, both of them own banks. Both of them own banks. Banks DIH has Citizen Bank. DDL has Demerara Bank. And both of them have diversified widely. Both of them have international acclaim. So you have all of these advantages going for public ownership, and yet you have all of these businesses who are looking for capital, who refuse to go public, and then complain about access to capital. You recall me making this point a couple of weeks ago, when, of all people, the head of a business organization in Guyana is complaining about access to capital at the banks. I couldn't believe it. But yet still, that person who's complaining owns a family business. And when you look at all those other businesses in the business groups and so on, family businesses, they refuse to relinquish control for free money. Because it's free money, you don't owe any bank. It's equity versus debt. Equity is given a stake of a shareholder in your company versus debt, which is given a stake to the commercial banks in your company. Debt you have to repay. Equity you repay in the form of a dividend. So if the company is not making any money, you can't pay a dividend. So the company is transferring risk from the singular owner or multiple private owners to the general public. But they don't want to do that. You'd rather go complain to your masters and say, well, we don't have access to the commercial bank, let me do something. And then you got these policies where you're rushing out to try to do this access to the banks. You try to do this access, and then you go and you create so much problems in the banking system with all these multiple interest rates. You have an interest rate for housing, right? A subsidized interest rate for housing, for which the taxpayers are paying the subsidy, and subsidized interest rate in the right sector for all those debts that the right sector are wrapped up, right? So you have a subsidized rate or a cut on the tax payments by banks because of the bad debts and all these guys. So you put all of those, you mess with the banking system, and then you turn around and tell the banking system, will have all these high rates. You think if we had a thriving stock market where people can go there, you have an IPO coming out every day or every other day or every week, where people are trusting the public more and more to get involved in the business, that you think when the commercial banks got that kind of competition that they will maintain the kind of interest rates that they are maintaining? Because people are going to be more and more out monies from the commercial bank to go and invest in these new companies, startups, and all these kinds of stories. So our whole financial system needs to be deepened. Now the brother asks whether ways in which grassroots entrepreneurs qualifying for startups, SME financing from the bank. Again, I think I've answered it in the sense that I'm saying, whether it's grassroots or otherwise, all banks and all finance institutions are going to look at the proposal that you're putting up, at the business proposal that you're putting up, and so on. And so I think when we talk about grassroots, don't let us give it this impression that it's like a raster and so on, where it doesn't come on. Grassroots only from the standpoint that it's coming from the beginning. But you had the Bill Gates and so on, who had grassroots businesses. They started out in the garage or in the basement and so forth. Those are the kind of business I presume that the guy is talking about. So we need now people who can move from an idea into a business proposal. I think this is where a merchant bank might come in. But since a merchant bank will charge a fee, and you don't have that kind of money, I think this is where, certainly from the standpoint of the black community, that we can put together some kind of business support group. Again, as I said, I'm dealing. This is August is our Black History Month, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going national because I don't know that this is going to be done. I don't know that this is going. So I'm talking here now, continuing the black framework, that we could put up together a black support business group that will teach people, or will help people along the way to move from their idea. Show them where, help them put it together in a proposal, and show them where they can go start up financing or so on. Again, as I said, part of that work will be a compendium of financial support that may be available in Guyana and overseas. To assist such type of businesses. A lot of businesses die in the initiative stage because the people do not know where to go. Okay, they do not know where to go. Another of my babies that you don't know is that I created that innovation fund under the Ministry of Education to help support students, and I see it was for people who also had graduated already. They put it for people who had graduated, but to help support students with these ideas, these science ideas, and so on, in that initial stage, to help it move from there, so that after they left school and so on, they can become bankable projects. This is what you have to we have to promote in Guyana. All right, so I feel that there is enough talent in the black community, and I feel there's talent that we could call upon for people in people outside of the black community that we could call upon. Because again, as I said, promoting these initiatives is not at the expense of the other race groups. Promoting these initiatives empowers the black community, and it empowers other communities. It empowers other communities. So it's not a us versus them scenario. It's a question of trying to ease the tensions in society and so on, where blacks are feeling frustrated, African Ghanaians are feeling frustrated, the self-worth is going down, and they feel that the whole world is against them. And so I think they need that confidence and support. And we go right back to it that it takes a village to raise a child. It will also take the village to raise the black manure. It will take that village to bring the inventiveness and the innovation out of that individual and so on. So yes, we have this additional feature. I wish the brother success. I wish him success, and that he will not, again, as a black-headed business, I am hoping and praying that he succeeds, because in this particular area, as you well know, they will always point to Globe Trust. They will always point to Globe Trust. That is an unfortunate event in the history of black business, black financing, of the black community. But I see, and what I see progress under the guys like Trevor Ben and what he was doing for the Guyana Cooperative Credit Union.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as I said at that symposium, it seems that success is anathema in the black community, because there you go. This man was doing something that was credible, that was promoting empowerment, was empowering people, and he was pulled down by his own. He was pulled down by his own. But I maintain that the Cooperative Credit Union can form itself into a successful banking institution and provide that same support that is provided and more, but now under a structured arrangement. Okay? But now under a structured arrangement. And given all the technology that you have, you don't have to have bricks and mortar around the place, in other words, big fancy headquarters and so forth. What you have to have is good internet products and so on, and good PR products to make certain that the people can get access and availability of the credit that you provided. But I still maintain, with the right approach, such savings and so on can be mobilized. I know the black community is going to be very wary of another black institution after Globe Trust. I mean, I meet people every day who said, Minister, Mr. Jordan, I lost so much money in it, why y'all didn't think, and so on. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and some people lost their pension and all kind of story in there. And, and the trust issue, they have, black people don't have trust issues when it comes to institutions. But I think we have to work on that trust.
Sure.
One storm does not make a swallow, or one swallow does not make a storm, whatever it is. We have to learn from these. We have to learn. We also have to learn, that we are within an environment, a powerful environment, that doesn't necessarily want to see us make that kind of progress. Dependency is a very powerful tool used to suppress people. And it's up to us to break that chain of dependency, or this thing, the feeling that your self-worth, you're not able to do anything, or you're not supposed to be in that field, and so on. So a lot of barriers to break, a lot of glass ceilings to break, and so on. But I think we have to be prepared to go the extra mile. And like I said, we have to put together rather than pulling apart. We have to pull together. We have to pull together, and that is what, unfortunately, I know it's not going to happen anytime soon. But we need to make baby steps, incremental steps in changing this whole status quo that we seem to have got ourselves in. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. It's now 8 minutes 58. That's 2 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. And so, given the challenges we have, we're going to take a wrap. Those of you who are tuned live, just you can alert your friends that I will be posting shortly a recording of this last segment of Buxtonian Morning Time. And so those of you who are blocked, you can get to view it. You can comment. I will try to follow your comments, and we'll follow them up in a subsequent program. In the meantime, have a great day. Join us this evening with Dr. Hinds of Politics 101. And certainly tomorrow morning, Dr. Hinds will be on with me on Buxtonian Morning Time, addressing the issues. Have a great day. Don't let the enemies beat you down. They can fight you. There's nothing wrong with falling. It is failing together. And so when they knock us down, we will keep getting up. Have a good day, y'all. Goodbye.
taking over!
Hi, sporting fans. It's here. Club Twilight is now open. Check us out on Sideline Dam, north side of the public road. All weekend, starting 6 o'clock this evening. 4 banks beer, $1,000. 5 GT beers, $1,000. Come and enjoy a spanking new and comfortable atmosphere. Popular music and popular DJs. Cutters on fleet. Yes, Club Twilight, your new entertainment zone. Sideline Dam, Buxton North. Come out and have a blast from 6 o'clock this evening. The weekend has started.
Ravens, we taking over!
Good morning, morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. They don't want me conniving, morning. Welcome to another program of Buxtonian Morning Time. It is now 7 hours 21 and you're tuned to the Buxtonian Morning Time. I am your host, Kams Tv. Share the life, please, and thanks. Share the life. The numbers are low this morning. I don't know why. Are you people lethargic? You getting out of bed slowly? Or you're not getting connected? Let's see. Yesterday they punched us, man. Straight right to belly bottom, and so they make we go down and then we had to come up and thing. Emily Durant wants to know if she can buy the beers and take them away. Not for $1,000. $4 for $1,000 suggests that you sit here and you drink your beers $4 for $1,000. Because if you're going to take them away, then the bar is going to lose on the bottle. There's a cost of bottles, you know. Okay, Emily Durant, keep that in mind. Yes, we're talking. We're talking. Share the life, please. Share the life. Yesterday they had us on the ropes, man. In the midst of it all, they came and they lashed us down. We got up and they lashed us again, but they expected us to stay down. Right? They expected us to stay down, but we don't stay down. Giving up is not an option. Giving up must never be an option. The ancestors didn't give up, did they? They didn't give up. They endured. And they came out on top of it all. I say that, yes. They came out on top of it all. And they left us legacies. Villages. Plantations. History. A lot of people pay scant regard to the history that the ancestors left us. But those who are not aware of their history can't learn from their history. And since you can't learn from your history, then you're likely to make some serious mistakes. Isn't that so? Yes, I think it is so. Let me take a break for perspiration's sake. I need to put on an enhancer in this studio. And so, think about that while I get my act together. I must sound lazy this morning, no? I wonder.
Psalm 91. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder. The young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy.
Yes, share the life, share the life, share the life. We're not where we want to be or where we should be, so please share the life. As I was saying, now if you don't know your history, you can't learn from it. And if you can't learn from it, then you're likely to make mistakes. You're likely to make mistakes. That were made in the past and even corrected in the past. Right? And there are many of us who are not in tune with the history of our people nor our country. And so for that very reason, lots of mistakes are being made. Right? Lots of mistakes are being made. I have a story I want to play for you this morning. Let me see if how will I play it? Let me see if I get it to play. Yeah, it seems as though I'll get it. Many of y'all didn't get play this. Or many of us did not play this. So I play a children's story for you. Right? Children's story. But I said, don't look a gift horse in his mouth. Listen to the story. It's called The Frogs Who Desired a King.
The Frogs Who Desired a King. Once there were frogs who lived together in a pond. They lived in peace with plenty of food.
Oh, I'm bored. Is there anything fun to do?
If we had a king, he would know what to do.
You're right. We need a king. He will make us as happy as can be.
Then let's pray for a king.
That night, the frogs began to pray together.
Please send us a great king.
The next day, a log fell over the pond.
Yay! Our king has come!
Wow, really?
Time passed, but the log was still floating on the pond.
What kind of a king is that?
He can't jump. He can't sing. There's nothing he can do.
Please send a new king for us.
The frogs began to pray again for a new king. The next day, a stork flew over the pond.
Wow, look at those elegant wings and the beautiful beak. That must be our king.
I think our true king is here. Hooray! Hooray! Hooray for our king!
The frogs hopped over to the stork. What a lucky day! Frogs are everywhere! I will eat you all!
Oh my! What have we done? We should have never wished for a king.
The frogs regretted their wishes, but it was too late. They were all eaten by the stork that day.
Oh,
Short and sweet. I hope you got the moral of the story. Short and sweet. I didn't ever talk the long story. Short and sweet. Y'all share the life. Share the life. Now let me tell you that Dr. Hinds is not going to be on today. I don't like talking man businessman. I prefer the man talk his own business. But he has traveled. He went back to work. And perhaps he is still on his way to work. So it's, after almost a day of traveling and so on, I don't know, I don't travel a lot. You get jet lagged and stuff like that. And so he's not going to be on this morning. It's likely that you're going to get Politics 101 this evening though. So bear with us. Yesterday it was the same situation. And so I couldn't say anything earlier about him not being on for Politics 101 yesterday because there was no communication really. Maybe it was in transit. And then after I realized time had passed and so on, I decided to drop you that note that he wasn't going to be on. So yes, this morning we are going to be talking with ourselves about ourselves. Dr. Hinds is likely to be on later in the week on BUXTONIAN morning time, but certainly he's likely to be on Politics 101 this evening. Good? So Brenda Casey wants to set the agenda for this morning. No, you can't set the agenda, Brenda. You can contribute to the agenda. We'll talk about the Guyana Police Force. Yes, it's part of the plan for today. We'll talk about the Guyana Police Force. But there are more important things than the Guyana Police Force, And I refer to us, the ancestors and us not understanding, not knowing our history. And when we don't know our history, some of the fallouts that we suffer. I can tell you, for the mere fact that I'm out there every day, I don't know if people are aware, but I'm out there every day dealing with African Guyanese issues, dealing with Guyanese issues, dealing with the ordinary rank and file citizens and their issues. And so I come across a whole lot of stories, and sometimes I call them treasures. And Chinseng Henry says there's a feedback. Is that what you're saying, Chinseng? Clarify for me. Is there a feedback? Is that what you're saying? Yes. And you learn from them because you're able to reflect on your past and the past of the ancestors. And you draw on that same past and you try to teach. But there are not many, well, I shouldn't say there are not many. There are many who are not prepared to learn from those histories, from that history. And it's a worrisome thing because it lands an entire community, an entire group of people, an entire section of the society in deep trouble, and then everybody blames each other. Everybody blames each other. Residents blame their leaders or the people they voted for and consider their leaders. The leaders blame residents or citizens who they believe are their supporters. And the blame game goes on and nothing gets done. And when nothing is getting done for a particular group of people, somebody comes up with a great idea like the frog, or one of the frogs, and say, hey, maybe if we had a king, we would be better off. And then they don't look among themselves for a king, or they don't think any among them is good enough to be a king. And so they go outside of the circle and they look for a king. Only to come to realize when it's too late that a king will result in all of their undoing. The king will result in all of their destruction. And in this instance, they will fight among themselves again in the community, because they will now blame each other for their current state of being. I'm talking in parables? I hope not. I'm talking about what is happening among African Guyanese in this society of ours. Monday. Morning, Victoria. If it's a frying sound, then it might just be the process of the laptop working. It's powerful. And that frying sound can get worse if I turn on the turbo. So that might be it. I would say it's more like a slight wind. Anyhow, don't stress yourself. Sometimes we have to experience a little discomfort in order to be comfortable. It sounds strange, right? But maybe that is what is happening this morning, because yesterday we got some punches under our belly, and this morning we had to come up with new ideas of how not to get punches. And so maybe that is contributing to you hearing the frying sound. Just rest yourself and focus on the message. I'm sure it's not that distracting. Yes, I've been working with Victoria for the last couple of weeks, trying to help them get attention to their plight in terms of the roads and other issues in their communities. And I like to say that these issues are not local to Victoria. They're not exclusive to Victoria. It's the same hue and cry you will hear from every African Guyanese community. Bad roads, dilapidated infrastructure, poor maintenance of drainage and irrigation canals, poor sanitation. Yeah? A lot of these issues stem from the fact that the neighborhood democratic councils, number one, do not have the kind of resources that are necessary to maintain a good environment, drainage and irrigation canal, parapets and so on, sanitation services. They do not have the resources to do it, financial and otherwise. But why don't they have the resources to do it? Because the taxes that people pay in these neighborhoods are, for the first instance, insignificant compared to the maintenance cost. A lot of residents wouldn't like me to say that, but the fact is the taxes are low. They're very low. because they are old rates. They're very old rates. In many instances, the rates that are being paid are still domestic rates when people have established businesses on their premises and so on, and therefore should be upgraded to commercial rate. And people ask what is the difference of commercial and domestic rate. If you have a commercial entity, it utilizes much more services than domestic. Your domicile will use, your home. You generate more garbage, you use more water, you use more electricity, you create more pollution, noise and otherwise, etc. And so your cost of maintenance rises. But that is not necessarily what I want to discuss this morning. But the rates and taxes are small, and then collection rates might be low, because citizens are faced with the burden of living, and so they can't afford to, or they neglect to pay the rates and taxes. And so the neighborhood democratic councils are in a hard position, between a rock and a hard place. Because the law allows them to seize your property and all kinds of things and carry it to court and all kinds of things. But then the question is, they're faced with, do we do that? Should we do that in order to get the rates and taxes so we can provide the services? The other aspect of that is whether or not central government has the political will to confront residents and say, well, listen, in order for us to provide the kind of services that are required, we have to raise these rates and taxes. So we have to go to Parliament and pass an act that will allow for the adjustment of rates and taxes. Remember, the Granger administration attempted it. The PPP promised that they're going to reverse it the minute they get into office. Right? While a lot of people are singing the praises of the PPP for wanting to reverse it or having reversed it or cause it not to be implemented, they're losing sight of the fact that they're not going to get these services based on the income and resources that are available to the NDCs, because in areas where the PPP controls the NDCs, they will give them a grant, a sanitation grant, etc. And so they will give them a grant and say that the CSSP workers must come from this area to maintain this area. And so those areas will be pristine. They'll be cleaned. But in areas where the coalition controls the NDCs, trust me, they ain't got no grant to get. And that has been reported across this country. They have no grant to get. They haven't been given any grant. And so they leave black people, African Guyanese, and the sprinkling of Indo-Guyanese who live in those communities to live in filth and without access to services. And so the residents of these African Guyanese neighborhoods, they become disgruntled and they blame their leaders. All of them sit down at the NDC, them not doing nothing. The chairman get time with nobody. And so on and so forth, and the blame game goes on, and then they start fighting among themselves. And while they're fighting among themselves, the enemy, the very persons, the very set of people who have set up this situation to be the way it is, implants one of their own. One from the community. Go and whisper this word around. The PPP could fix the problems. Let us go to Anil Nandlal. Let us go to Charles Ramson. Let us go to Nigel Dharamlal. Let us go to Ejil. Let us go to whoever in the PPP and invite them to these black communities, these African Guyanese communities, to resolve the problems. And they come gleefully. They come gleefully, man. They're happy to come. And they come and they plant more seeds of discord among you. And so half of the community is saying, we should welcome them to start resolve these issues. And the other half is saying, y'all mad. You're not welcome here. And so there's a fight in the communities. And the meetings will go on without, despite the fights. And at the end of it all, resolution will come. Right? At the end of it all, resolution will come. But will the resolution be in your favor? Will the resolution bring the result that you expected? For many, the answer might be yes, because they're selfish thinkers. For many, what is good for them is a plot of land. For many, what is good for them is the right to open a business in a residential area. For many, what is good for them is getting a backboard for the basketball court. But in the long run, what is good for the community, what is good for your people, what is good for the African Guyanese society is not achieved. Right? It is not achieved. This person was using my name with a 2 at the end, Kidaki 2. Well, that's not in my name. An imitation of my name, because my name is not, that's not the spelling of my name. But every time I see it, I get angry. I'm going to block you. So you can change your name. And you will be allowed to stay and talk all you like. But don't use my name. Or anything that is close to my name. I'm going to block you. Good. Right? What is good for the wider community is not achieved. Because like the stocks found out, they're going to pay the price. We have a situation developing across this country where African Guyanese are running to the PPP to ask them to resolve problems within their communities. I heard a report, for example, from a Victorian the other day, that there's a young guy or a guy who was a PPP affiliate in the community. And a number of them approached him and asked him why he doesn't talk to the PPP to fix some of the issues in the village. And they were bluntly told the PPP said when you have vote for them, they're going to fix it. In other words, here's the messenger: vote for the PPP and your problems will be resolved. Otherwise, you ain't got nothing to get. Right? And this is a government we're saying is a government for all the people. This is a government that we're saying is a government for all the people. That's one example. There's the other example of Melanie. The Melonians reached out to me to highlight the plight with the street. Access Road, I think it was. Sometime shortly after, the ministerial outreach went to Melanie. There are those among them who took the opportunity to approach again Nandlal and others and say, listen, Melanie is managed by a co-op. We're not satisfied with how the co-op is managing Melanie. We want to throw them out. And you must come and form an interim management committee. You must come and form an interim management committee. You're also allowed to form a CDC. I understand the CDC was formed. But with interventions, the IMC was not formed. At least that's what that is what I was told. Because some people had to talk sense into their heads to let them understand that once you allow the government to form an IMC, and this is where people are not paying attention to the history. Look what happened to the GPSU with an IMC. Look around the country to the other co-ops that had IMC and see what happened. As a matter of fact, look at the city council when they formed an IMC, and the other neighborhood democratic councils when IMCs were formed. The IMCs never work to the benefit of the people. They work for the benefit of the PPP and their cronies. And like they were advised in Melanie in the first instance, what the government is going to do is select not necessarily Melonians, but their trusted lieutenants to head up the IMC, and then they will pick a token few from the community. And so said, so suggested by whoever the thing was. And I think that brought some sense to their heads, and they decided, no, we ain't going to go down the road now. And while they were quick enough to take the advice and avoid it, in the backlist, again, I understand coming out of that same outreach perhaps, a set of villagers again approached Nandlal to fix their problems in the backlist as they see it. Because my understanding is that they're saying there are lots of lands back of Nabaklis, ancestral lands. And the now generation and the older generation are at tug of war with it, or for it. Ownership must be transferred, and who owns it and who doesn't own it, and who wants access to it, and who wants, what do they call it? Credentials, cargage we call it. Title and so on, that they can go to the bank and get money and stuff. And so there's that infighting in the village, Nabaklis, like there is in Melanie and there is in Victoria. And I almost bet there will soon be, or if it hasn't already started happening, in places like Golden Grove and so on, among the residents. And who they're calling to fix their issues? The enemy. They say when brothers fight, strangers inherit. And the enemy is going gleefully to fix their issues. Why? Because there is much, much more to gain than lose for the enemy if they quote unquote fix their issues. Let me explain what fixing their issues is. If as Melonians are running to the PPP to resolve whatever issues they have in Melanie, many of them are not aware that the PPP has gerrymandered the boundaries of Melanie. They have shifted the boundaries of Melanie. They shifted the boundaries of Melanie inward and robbed the Melonians of hundreds of house lots, which they now call enterprise. The evidence is there if you want to see it. And so a whole lot of house lots belonging to Melanie has been shifted into enterprise. And obviously, those house lots are now lost to the African Guyanese community for the greater part and have been allocated to friends and cronies of the PPP. Or even under the quote-unquote PPP housing development plan at Ministry of Housing, where they hand out house lots. So a lot of those lots that were under control of the co-op, the government under the PPP has stolen. And this didn't happen now. And while there's an order of the court that says, listen, the government is obligated to give back 50 or 60 house lots to this co-op, it has not been honored. At least not until now. But residents are still of the opinion that if they turn to this very government which stole from them in the first instance to resolve their issues, it is going to be to their benefit. Y'all understand that? You're just inviting them to do more harm to you. The few of you who are bringing them in might get your issues resolved. But what happens to the greater Melonian community? What happens to the greater African Guyanese community? You're going to end up like the frogs and the stork. And when you see the end result, you are going to fight even worse among each other. Now let's go to Nabaklis. I understand over Nabaklis a similar situation obtains basically, well, I explained to you, this is about ancestral lands. While these African Guyanese are saying among themselves, we want access to this land, we want title for this land, we want this land to be given to the next generation, etc., etc. There are some Indo-Guyanese who are on the side saying, a lot of the lands at the back of Nabaklis belong to our foreparents. They had to run and leave it in the 60s or whenever there were these racial conflagrations. When there were the disturbances, they had to leave them and go away. And so this is peacetime. We have an interest in coming back to Nabaklis and getting our lands. I've done the research to say how much of that is true in terms of the land ownership. But I'm simply saying, I think this claim is being made by the Indo-Guyanese. And African Guyanese are inviting a man who we knew, who we are quite aware of, the fact that he attempted to steal lands from African Guyanese in Litchfield. Do you remember the Lincoln Lewis saga? If you are inviting him to, quote unquote, resolve this land issue, you are going to end up holding the short end of the stick. Because by the time the process is finished, you will hear that so many plots of these lands went to Indo-Guyanese who have an ancestral claim on it, or so they say. Like I said, I haven't done the research, so I don't know how accurate that could be. So the few who are fighting over this thing because they want ownership and so on might very well get the plot of land or get the title or whatever they want from it. But what happens to Nabaklis at the end of the day as a community? What happens to the wider African Guyanese community in terms of this land ownership? And why are our people making this mistake of running to the enemy with the belief that they will get their issues resolved? Is it because of failure of black leadership? Is it because black leadership is not aware that these problems exist in these communities and they are not made aware of the existence of these problems until folks run to the enemy to solve them? Or is it that these issues are brought to them and they move at snail's pace to have them resolved? Because they are in their glass houses and looking down upon the very people who they look to for their support. Is Anil Nandlal the greatest attorney in this country? Or the only attorney? That black communities with issues like these cannot turn to a black attorney? Expecting pro bono service? Because I am sure that is what they expect from Anil. Pro bono service. The issues are many. I don't claim to have the solutions. But I'm saying African Guyanese villages, residents of African Guyanese villages, must first look internally to settle their issues through mediation, etc. before turning to the enemies, because at the end of the day, they will end up worse off. They'll end up like the stork and the frogs, or the frogs and the stork. And when they find themselves in these conundrums, then is when they run to black leaders. Right? Then is when they run to black leaders to say, this is the situation, can you help us out here? Right? We have to, as a people, like the ancestors did, sit around the bottom of the Kamaka tree. In this instance, it might be somebody's bottom house, and work on these issues. Work on these issues. Because as I see it, the PPP has certainly dealt us some blows and forced us in corners that we will have to make hard choices. We have to make hard choices. And they always leave a way for an easy choice. The easy choice is not always the best. Keep that in mind. The easy choice is not always the best. And a lot of our people are making this mistake. A lot of our people are making this mistake. And part of the thing which is fueling this disconnect or this lethargy, whichever one you want to call it, is the fact that a lot of our very villages are used as implants, and nobody is handling their business. Nobody is confronting them and setting them right. I always say on this program, the Indo-Guyanese community is brutal when it comes to their politics. From the time the PPP understands that you live in Lusignan and Annandale and Traspi and so on, as an Indian, and you're supportive of the AP and your any other political party. Take, for example, the Azizes of Bushlat or wherever they're from, Bobbies. They had their butchery burnt to the ground. They still are being victimized. That's what they do in Indo-Guyanese communities to keep their folks in line. I'm not saying it's a good thing to do, it's the right thing to do. But in short, I'm saying when they find one of their own being quote-unquote treacherous to the cause, they confront them. In black communities, nobody confronts anybody. Everybody whispers, the one there, the PPP. But he gets to live his life, he gets to go about his merry business, he gets to be involved in all of the community's business, to collect and carry tales out to the enemy. It's happening in Victoria. It's happening in black communities across this country. Black people have to address these issues in their communities if they expect that they will triumph at the end of the day. A meeting I went to at Victoria Monday, and I'm referencing it because it's the most recent. There was a gentleman, all he was saying is, the coalition been there for 5 years, they don't do nothing for nobody. I mean, why hear none but them? But when you call him to reason, he walked out of the yard. He doesn't want to reason. He doesn't want to hear a thing. I see brothers like those as implants of the PPP. They were sent there to put doubts in the minds of the people. And that's all they're interested in. Once they plan, they see, they'll move on. And I'm saying African Guyanese have to be aware of and be careful, be cautious of falling prey to such agents. You got to be very, very cautious, because those are the agents who come and they put doubt in your mind, and they encourage you to castigate those who might have your best interests at heart. They might be slow to the draw. I'm saying this again, they might be slow to the draw. They might be slow to the draw. But at the end of the day, if you work with them and you keep them under pressure, the result is likely to be a better result than you will get running to the enemy, into the arms of the enemy. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. You cannot want to say people don't have time, because people got to find a living. They don't have time to support their leadership and to stand at the back of their leadership, or to stand alongside their leadership and expect you will get a result. That will serve your purpose. You have to be prepared to support your leadership, and you have to be prepared to hold your leadership accountable. But running into the open arms of the enemy is not going to solve the problem. It's not going to solve your problem. I see Winslow, I think, is saying Nabakis and Melody, I don't have to worry about them, because Anil Nandlal is addressing it legally. Anil has addressed a lot of things legally, but the end results are usually questionable. I like to refer to when Trevor Ben was Commissioner of Lands and Survey. The mess he met there, because of all of the underhand and corrupt transactions when it came to lands and land holdings and land rights that was taking place there, has left a lot of our people disenfranchised. I think Simona Brooms had and others had a protest yesterday about mining land, from which a sister was being bullied off. Right? Keep that in mind. Are you outside? Okay. Yes, keep that in mind. Like I said, a lot of these issues that people think they want resolved will be resolved. It is not necessarily going to be resolved in their favor or in the favor of the wider African Guyanese community. So the few who quote unquote want resolution will get resolution. They will get what they want. They will be paid a finder's fee. Yeah, let me call it that, a finder's fee. They will be paid a finder's fee. Thanks for bringing this treasure trove to us so we can do what we like with it. Here is your 30 pieces of silver, a plot of land. But what happens to your next generation? What happens to your community? These are things you must address. These are things we must address. There's a letter from a lawyer. addressing to some extent the historical aspects of what Anil is about to do. It reads, Dear Editor, we the concerned residents of Nabaklis, Victoria and Golden Grove strongly condemn the attempt by the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandlal to land grab our ancestral lands. In the case of Victoria, the plantation was purchased in 1839. Our foreparents established a village government and promulgated a constitution which governed our interaction with the lands. This included the issuing of leases. In the case of Plantation Williamsburg, which is today Golden Grove, and the sister village Nabaklis, the estate was settled between 1851 and 1854 in parcels. Unlike Victoria, which was purchased as a block, individual transports were issued in the case of Golden Grove and Nabaklis. Our ancestors organized by way of an elected village council that was guided by their understanding of plantation management. There were no formal government system regulating their use of land. Their use and occupation of the former plantation lands commenced from the northernmost sea dam and extended to the Krung Dam, about half a mile before the East Demerara Conservancy. Interference with the savanna, swampland between Krung Dam and Conservancy, was always prohibited as it served a vital purpose in preventing flooding. In 1903, the Krung Lands Act was implemented to regularize lands left by the planters class that were not sold or gifted to the former enslaved. This legislation was later supplanted by the Lands Department Act in 1985 and then the Guyana Lands and Survey Act in 1999. The farmlands at Nabaklis, Golden Grove and Victoria are in use for over 145 years before the existence of the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission. The Commission, therefore, having existed from 1999, purportedly assumed the functions of issuing lease to ancestral lands. The function of issuing leases for the farmlands not delineated prior to the unconstitutional disband of village councils was exercised by the village council, which was elected by villagers from among themselves. The Attorney General and 22 supporters from the village who attended the meeting, boycott by the majority, are arguing that only 51 persons purchased lands in 1854. They further argue that these 51 persons hold transport for the first polder of lands at Nabaklis, and that the remaining lands were property of the British government. Even if this argument is to suffice, the said untransported lands were leased for over 145 years by the village council and occupied open and uninterrupted by the villagers. It was only in 2009 that Nandlal passed the Title to Land Prescription and Limitation Amendment Act, which prevents adverse possession of the said land. But this is not our case. We maintain that our foreparents purchased all these lands and left in our care, even while the planters class remained in the colony of Demerara after emancipation. The Local Government Authority Acts failed to expressly make provision for the safeguarding of these pre-existing rights to the use and occupation of land. We maintain that at all material times from 1851 to 1854 in the case of Nabaklis and Golden Grove, and from 1839 in the case of Victoria, we have been farming and hunting these lands, forested or not, uninterrupted, and in the absence of any oversight by the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission. We never applied for a lease to the Commission, nor did we at any time pay any dues to the Commission with respect to these lands our ancestors left for us. We have read the Mabo case and the Terra Nullius doctrine, and verily believe, as we are legally and historically guided, that the lands in question are unique and cannot now constitute the subject of any inquiry by a government department. If the Attorney General and the Guyana Lands and Surveys remain convinced that our ancestral lands form part of their state, we believe that a full judicial settlement at the highest level is the only way to settle this dispute. State actors are invoking, after some 180 years of continued, uninterrupted occupation of these lands. Signed, Attorney at Law on record for concerned residents of Nabaclis, Golden Grove, and Victoria. Good. So there's a lawyer who is responding to these what should I say, this masquerade? By Anil, and according to the letter to his 22 followers. But why do I bring this to you? So that African Guyanese across this country in their communities can be aware of this new onward march by Anil and the PPP to rob us, to rob our next generations of our ancestral lands. Remember what they did for Praderville too. It must never happen again in this country. And any, all and sundry who attempt to make it happen must be addressed, and addressed accordingly. All and sundry. They must be addressed accordingly. If there are land disputes in your communities, black people, African Guyanese, let us try to resolve them. Reach out to Trevor Ben. Reach out to Kidaki Amsterdam and David Hinds. We might not have all the wisdom and understanding, but we can point you to people who can assist in resolving these issues and provide good guidance so that you don't fall into a trap that will leave you and your next generations disenfranchised. I rest my case on that. I rest my case on that. Now people want me to address that laughable letter from the Guyana police force, or that laughable press release. I don't know what really and truly there is to address. Okay? But we will address it. Give me a minute. Someone is at my gate. We will address it. Y'all asked for it. Prepare for it. And thank you for staying tuned. Let's talk about that letter. Y'all saw it? It's a press release actually. Have you seen it? Let me share it with you. Statement from the Guyana Police Force. The matter of Dion Bascom. Police Sergeant Dion Bascom has, over recent days, made a number of public, wholly unsubstantiated allegations, which have been given wide media coverage, alleging police misconduct in the ongoing investigation of the murder of Ricardo Fagundes. Sergeant Bascom has refused to submit himself to any investigation by the police of his public allegations, nor provide any evidence in support of the allegations which he has made public. It is not without significance that Sergeant Bascom found himself personally compromised during an exercise carried out by the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, and that his public statement immediately followed this matter. Sergeant Bascom, at his request, is currently at home on sick leave. It is unfortunate that Sergeant Bascom's unfounded allegations have publicly involved senior members of the force and other persons. This is of grave concern to the Guyana Police Force. Sergeant Bascom's public statements, made while serving as an active member of the Guyana Police Force, is in breach of the Code of Conduct of the Police Force. I have, as a result, ordered an immediate investigation of this matter by the Office of Professional Responsibility. The Office of Professional Responsibility has submitted the findings of their investigation along with their recommendations, which is now before the Director of Public Prosecutions for legal advice. I had one word in response to this statement: laughable. Laughable. A certain well-known public official said, "That's my word. Choose another one." Right? Ludicrous. Let me tell you something. I can go through, yes, it was a very quick investigation, Barbara. I can go through the statement line for line, paragraph by paragraph, and shred it. But I don't have the time to waste. Let me say this. The allegations made by Dion Bascom, they say, are unfounded, and he has not provided a shred of evidence. You be the judge. Those of you who have seen the live appearances on social media by Dion Bascom would see him presenting evidence. Presenting evidence. He has shown, he has made reference to the transaction between himself and Caesar, and he has shown the evidence exists. He has made reference to a phone call received from whatever the guy's name, they allege the bodyguard of Mohammed, and he has shown evidence to that extent. He has shown the printout. He has explained his presence at the location where Kanu raided and found drugs. He explained his presence there. He explained that based on all that went on, he knew he wasn't going to be charged by Kanu. There's nothing contrary to that because Kanu has not charged him. He has not been charged. While let's say he made these statements immediately after compromising himself, check the timeline and you will see that several days elapsed from the arrest and the publication of this drug story to Dion Bascom making these public claims. They said he is in breach of the police code of conduct. Yes, they did that to Shanet Ballers also. In other words, if you are aggrieved as a serving member of the Guyana Police Force and your senior officers and the system will do nothing about it, you have no choice but to stay quiet and suffer. Because it's not post-emancipation, it's pre-emancipation. You're still in the slavery days. And so you must stay quiet and suffer. You dare not make it public. Because we will do nothing about it internally, but you dare not make it public. Because we are going to use the police code of conduct not only to dumb you down, but to dismiss you. And so they had this investigation by OPR. And OPR has submitted its findings to legal guidance to the DPP. Same cat's the poos. And the legal guidance from the DPP is likely to come back and say he is in breach, dismiss him. But the ambassador made an important observation. He asked the question, why will I submit myself to OPR? When after the investigation is conducted by OPR, the findings have to go to the very people I'm accusing, because OPR is answerable to them. This is a matter of trying the devil's case in hell. Why would I submit myself to that? And he has said, let the police complaints authority do the investigation. Let the police complaints authority do the investigation. Or better yet, let an external international agency do the investigation. They want to get to the bottom of it. They want to know if these claims are unsubstantiated. Let them take his advice. Or like we say, let him call his bluff. And don't bluff people with a nonsense statement like this. As another set of people like to say, we big but we stupid. This statement is one which was expected. The Guyana Police Force has talked about serious allegations being made against senior officers. Does it have an interest in finding out if these allegations are true or not? Has it mentioned anywhere in this statement that it will cause to be launched an impartial investigation into these claims made by BUXTON? Until the government, Brock Up Ben, and the rest of them can say that we're going to invite an international agency, the likes of Scotland Yard and Interpol, and the FBI and the CIA, to independently investigate these allegations. Anything else they choose to do is considered garbage and cover up in my book. And the ambassador, as he is doing right now, is standing his ground. And he should continue to stand his ground. I don't know where he is. I have no interest in where he is. All I'm concerned about is him standing his ground and staying safe. Don't be like George Bacchus or whichever one and sleep by the window. They can come after you. And by now, since you're a police intelligence officer, you know they're going to come after you. You might know their methods too. I'm not sitting here to say BUXTON is a saint. I don't know BUXTON. But I know the likes of BUXTON. And just as how allegations are made about the top ranks of the Guyana Police Force involved in nastiness, I expect there are people who will come and say BUXTON has been involved in nastiness. But does that mean his allegations are not factual? Huh? Does that mean he doesn't have credibility? And so the allegations shouldn't be investigated? And I am saying that those officers who have been implicated by these allegations, they should all be sent on administrative leave and an independent investigation launched. I said it days ago and I'm saying it again. All of them, from the commissioner acting right down to the lowest rank whose name was called. Every single one of them should be sent on admin leave. But we're not going to get that, because the government is interested in keeping in the Guyana police force ranks who are corrupt and compromised so that they can have them do their biddings. I have no apologies to that. And I will repeat, Nigel Hughes said his client will be defended stoutly. And I look to the day when these issues are going to be ventilated in court or at a commission of inquiry. There's nothing the Guyana Police Force Strategic Communications Unit can issue that will convince me otherwise. I've already drawn my conclusion. As a matter of fact, my conclusion was drawn long before the ambassador made these allegations. The top ranks of the Guyana Police Force, they're tremendously compromised. They're compromised in all sorts of things. Sexual exploitation of ordinary ranks, trainees. Corrupt practices, siphoning off state property from the police workshop. Misappropriation of police property. All of these things, a whole lot of them are guilty of. Sometimes I just hold my breath and don't say much because I don't want to compromise my sources of information. But we like to talk about, there were people beating you when they found out that your friends did something bad. They beat you and tell you if you didn't do it, then a beating you so you're going to know that you shouldn't do it. So even if these are not guilty of the allegations that Bascom is making, they're guilty of lots of other allegations. They've been compromised in so many ways. I can make a long list, like I said, but I don't like to reveal my sources. And sometimes when you say it, they can go to your source because they know that these are the people who know about it. Let the mother of all investigation begin in this police matter. Bascom is standing by his allegations. Citizens are standing behind Bascom. What else a government could want if it is interested in proper policing and policing with integrity? The likes of Caesar and Blanham and the rest of them whose names are being called should want to clear their names. Their integrity should mean something to them. And protecting your integrity and clearing your name can be achieved by running to the courts with a lawsuit. That's an attempt to shut up the allegation. That's an attempt to shut up the accuser. And then he get a shaman moment there. I said, shut up the alligator. It is an attempt to shut up the accuser. You see it left, right, and center all around the world. They want to shut you up, they run to the courts for lawsuit. The ambassador will not be shut up this time. He said it is not going to be shut up. Citizens are standing by him. You want to clear your name? Let the inquiry begin. Dismissing Bascom will not solve the problem in the Guyana Police Force, you know. Because there are other allegations which will be made. They say a certain senior officer in the police force has appointed himself in every position where money is concerned. appointed himself. From the police squad all the way down. Because he must say and direct where the money goes so that he could put his hand on it. It's not an allegation. The evidence is there. You only have to check these appointments and you're going to see it. Have you heard anything from Brock Ben on this situation? He was quick. He was a chief fire officer when they were fired. He was quick to point fingers. There's a bigger fire in the Guyana police force now. Because its top ranks are involved allegedly in corruption and cover-up of murder. And protection of criminals who break into people car and giving them $1.something million of protection. All of these are allegations. In any decent country, with any decent minister responsible for public security, heads would have been rolling already. And perhaps the Minister of Home Affairs needs to go. Because the buck stops with him or further up, all the way to the fat guy. Heads must roll. But am I really and truly expecting heads to roll in this society? No. Criminals protect each other. And there are a whole bunch of criminals running this country and running the Guyana police force. The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call. 6225933 is the number to call. Don't let them intimidate you. And the civilians who make up the strategic communication unit and writing crap, I blame you not. You're simply earning your bowl of soup. I've said it, and I have no apologies to make. Six 6225933 is the number to call. I see some clown yesterday say we perhaps should bring Cleric or Cleric, whatever his name. Remember Jack Deere wanted to bring a man named Cleric? The worst New York police chief they ever had to run the Guyana police force. That's what I like. Corruption. Call A Live, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Daki. Good morning, everyone in the diaspora. Good morning, all Guyanese. I think I'm still looking for the possibility for Mr. Boston's case to be taken directly to another jurisdiction to be heard. Possibly the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice. Here is why. In instances where the matters are so potentially prejudicial, they could prejudice Boscom. You can't try the devil's court in hell. You can't ask the mongoose to watch the chicken. Who will ask the police to police the police? So it sets the precedent. There has to be that precedent in the Commonwealth. I know there is a precedent there in the world where if a person cannot have a proper trial in his or her jurisdiction, they move it to another jurisdiction. Case in point, R. Kelly's case. There are many cases around the world, in the CARICOM as well. So it's very possible that if Nigel Hughes is the attorney, I would have moved to another jurisdiction because it's so prejudicial. I don't see at this point. Just look, the case has already started against Mr. Boscom. And it's a case of conflict of interest. You've got one attorney representing all three persons. So there is evidence already to substantiate conflict of interest and prejudice. That's already prima facie or obvious in our face. That there is no impartial position for Boscom's case. That's already established. To Madam Chase of the Guyana Bar Association, I am saying that is already established. To the lawyers, to Nigel Hughes, I'm saying there is no impartial environment for this case. That is already established. So why not make an argument to move to the CCJ? Secondly, I heard in the Demerara waves that Claudette Singh is saying that she makes decisions based upon law. But I want to tell the retired Judge Claudette Singh that that may be so in many instances. But with regards to the recent election, she made some major decisions that were not rooted in law. Let me itemize two. When she forced Lowenfield to violate Article 96 of ROPA, to count votes which are not valid, which are not verified by law, and to hold him on the duress by saying, we'll hold you in subordination, and the other commissioners also piggyback on that. That's under duress. That's coercive action. That's influencing the process. Lowenfield is an autonomous constitutional officer. So Claudette Singh, to make the point that she makes decisions based upon law, that is wrong. We should take her to court. Claudette Singh single-handedly disenfranchised all Guyanese in the judicial process, in the electoral process. She disenfranchised us by allowing herself to facilitate a process that broke Order 60. That broke ROPA. She broke ROPA, she deviated from ROPA, and the CCJ had to point that out, that this is an entirely new regime. This is not ROPA, this is Order 60. So for Claudette Singh to say that she makes decisions that are rooted in law, that is a false statement. She should be taken to court. Once again, for Mr. Bostom's case, I think Mr. Bostom should make an argument, Nigel Hughes, that it cannot go have a hearing in Guyana under these circumstances. And that is already established. If it's not established, if Mr. Hughes is saying that has not been sufficiently established, then why everybody is saying that this case is a conflict of interest to begin with? Once again, thank you for listening.
Thank you. I see the part Kerry Perry see is trying to procure tickets for me to go to the races. Hey! I don't take part in the rich and corrupt activities, you know. I don't go to horse racing. I don't go to car racing. I don't go to bike racing. I know my lane. And that's why they ain't got nothing on me, because I know my lane. If it's black like what I can afford, I stay in that lane. I ain't yummy, I wanty. I know my lane. The likes of critics and them buy one warm soup. They got to the line, not me. Call it live, good morning.
Morning, Kadaki, and morning, Guyana. Great call from Coffee. As stated, Guyana is never going to get any place until you root out the evil of the Indian PPP party. Simply, if that is kept going, corruption galore. From the time they came to Guyana, it's corruption. Ancestral lands. Why the hell do black people always putting themselves in this position? We keep getting licks, and we go into the same people who giving you the licks. How stupid can we be as a people? Solution is we've got to inform our people about getting their act together and to provide solutions to land leases in our community. And it just seems like the word is not getting out to them because they're always in a poor state and will just take any money to give away their ancestral lands. We simply have lost our way. We start to fight each other because we can always think them Indian people know better and can provide solution. That was a great letter the attorney wrote the Attorney General. And more of that needs to be done. Matter of fact, a letter like that needs to be circulated throughout Guyana, especially in the African community, because it is happening on a daily basis where they're being dispossessed of the ancestral land. And the PPP is coming up with gimmicks to steal it while they're just twiddling their thumbs. I mean, so then we have to look at the opposition. They know about these things, but refuse to inform the people, not being proactive. It's just ridiculous. And Mr. Boscombe have done the right thing. He done the right thing. And for Guyana to simply sit there and think that the police, from top to bottom, even the government officials, are not corrupt, is simply turning a blind eye. When it comes to the Indians, I've not heard any of them actually answer questions. All they're crying is that we are, well, racist and all of that. But they have not answered to anything, any of the facts that's been brought up. And that's my take.
Thank you for your call. I see a lot of people, a lot of you dropping messages in the chat. Don't go anywhere, Miss Thompson. Listen, why you are treating me like a common trenchy, intellectually lazy? Is that the impression you got of me? Huh? Not me. I ain't licky. I ain't wanty. I'm comfortable in my zone. I didn't tell you all before when Critic invited me to join him. Not me, I go where? Right? Critic is an acquaintance or was an acquaintance of mine, you know. We used to meet up on Rob Street. At, what's the place? Used to be Beck's trading before, Cloud Technology. We used to lime and drink 2 beers then, sir. Call it live, good morning.
All right, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. Man, look how this thing is obvious with this guy Boscombe allegation. Now you got the businessman who really is the kingpin in derailing everything because of his money connection or his wealth. He was involved, one, it was a list that he was the big finance man, or he was part of the finance man there for the PPP getting into office. So now, when you look at that, we come down now to the government. Now, you don't know that just look into those 2 areas, Boscombe dead on arrival. He could never, ever, under the circumstances, get hired. We don't go to Higgins and season them. Because they are working for the government, who got a strong ties with this businessman. So definitely everything is being folded up. So it's not really Higgins or the Guyana police force, it's the PPP government. Boscombe is up against. You know. So Coffee said take it to the Caribbean court. You see where it comes back, where been saying all the time, Guyana is a failed state. None of these institutions, nothing is operating. Nothing is, you don't have the democratic norms nowhere around here in Guyana. And until we decide to start to look directly where these problems they lie, we can't do anything. We're going to go around like a confusion powder as in circles, as Shera just said. We got to pay attention and some simple things we are missing this bus by. We are allowing this bus to leave, they stop and move on without us being on board. You know. Guyana is a failed state. And that's my take, Mr. Amsterdam. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Voice note.
Morning, Kadaki. Morning, Kadaki. I said the crazy stuff is going on in Guyana right now. And this is exactly where the PPP flourish, in craziness. Said the illegal activities and a set of confusion. The justice system in Guyana is no more. As soon as the PPP get in there, the justice leave the system. There's just a system right now that is being used by the government to enforce their will. And that needs to stop. With the issue with the police guy, the only thing could help him, honestly, is the media got to report the right stuff and ask the right question from the same people who are being accused. Let the media person go to the Minister of Home Affairs and ask him the right question. Ask the president what is going on with the matter. They got to ask the right question and stop being up. Alright, yeah. That's it.
I want to ask a question. I am challenging. I mean, I know what the result going to be. Right? Bascom said that the pre-action letters threatening lawsuit were all delivered to him on the same day from the same lawyer for all three of the claimants. I want Caesar show his receipt for paying the lawyer. Only Caesar. But now that the question has been asked, it's likely that something will be arranged for the receipt to be written. What about Richmond? You know they say when you want to find out what's happening, you gotta follow the money. Follow the money. I would like to know who is paying Punai and Punai. But like I said, even if individual receipts weren't written, they will be written now. Be big. But we ain't stupid. There's got to be a serious coincidence. And I don't really believe in coincidence. It has to be a serious coincidence for 3 persons to choose the exact lawyer to sue somebody. The man got that law firm got to be the #1 law firm when it comes to lawsuits. Give me wait. None of these banners didn't decide, hey, Nigel Hughes is one of the best lawyers in this country. Let me go to Hughes, Fields, and Stobie. Oh, we got so many chambers around. I mean, I don't know all of them. I don't want to promote them anyhow. But none of these people believe that there are other lawyers out there that we could use. Punai and Punai got to be the best. They had a lion named Vicpuran, y'all remember him? Y'all remember Vicpuran? That's the boys of a feather flock together. It is alleged that all the drug kingpins used to go to Vicpuran. There's a liar who it is believed ran off the road somewhere up Mahika into Trenton and died by drowning. Y'all remember the story? Huh? Somebody say he's dead now. Yes, John Ferguson. I'm telling y'all how he dead. Let's remember. We got 5 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. 62593 is the number. You know, when I worked at DPI, I used to tell him, man, can God rest the dead. And my colleagues in the communication room, I think we call it now. Can't remember. That I am the Oliver Pope of Guyana. Y'all go try with Olivia Pope of Scandal. Right? Scandal used to be one of my favorite series. And hey, I think I've learned so much from it. I always like to read. You know, I look at certain series and movies and so on. You really got to preempt these idiots when they come to you with nonsense. Having read The Kings of Cocaine, Pablo Escobar's story, I understand how the underworld works. I understand how a major drug dealer, money launderer, smuggler, whatever, can take control of an entire police department, an entire government. That's the other day, you remember the Port Authority, the woman at the Port Authority, and I think, was it the Prime Minister? Yes. Or whatever the name given to him, of one of these islands, British Virgin Islands or one of them. Y'all remember they ended up in jail in the US? Because the paper trail was there to show how they were involved with the underworld to smuggle drugs into the US. As a matter of fact, they left their territory to go to the US to finalize the payments. Y'all remember that? Y'all don't try interrogating Bascom. Bascom has said what he had to say. Let's interrogate Caesar and Richmond and Mohammed and all the other people who Bascom has alleged, all the other people who Bascom is alleging are involved in criminal practices in this country. You remember the PPP had dismissed the whole set of people because they failed lie detector test? It means we have the machinery down here, right? Let these people take some public lie detector tests. Like a game show. Let us do it where the camera's present. And see who got more credibility. Where is the top echelons of the Guyana police force or this sergeant? Simon Blackman is asking about the guy who spent time in the US jail for drug smuggling or whatever, having control over the Guyana government. The PPP government is always controlled by criminals. I think the cleanest PPP government might have been led by Chedi Jagan. Once the likes of Jagdeo get into the picture, all gone downhill. All gone downhill. So, who? Sue? Oh, Sue Jerome? Yeah. He's a long-standing friend of ours. At least he acknowledged the existence of Sue. In the 2000s, he said, Roger, I don't know Roger Khan. I've never met Roger Khan. But there were photos and videos showing Roger Khan entering and exiting the presidential secretariat. I mean, maybe he didn't meet him. Maybe he was using a middleman like Sue. It's 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock. Y'all making a call or sending a voice note? Let me see. Don't see any voice notes. I think I saw a voice note earlier, you know. Where is it? Yes, I did see one. Lest I be accused of bias. Oh, it's no longer there. It was removed. All right, good. Message deleted. Good, y'all. Have a good morning. At least they didn't interrupt our program today. The thing was, he walking. Oh, yeah. Join Dr. Hinds tonight for Politics 101. In fact, let me close off with this message from Dr. Hinds here.
Playing the steel pan, I refer to them as cultural workers. We like to call them entertainers, but they're workers, cultural workers. And the steel pan, of course, is part of the genius of our Caribbean people. That we took steel drums that were meant to fight war and create an instrument that can bring peace to our region. So let us give them a round of applause. And I especially want to welcome those of you who are not from Buxton to our village. We are part of the village movement, the greatest entrepreneurial initiative ever taken in this country. Let us give ourselves a round of applause. And we in Buxton are no different from any other village. We have the challenges of other villages, and we have also contributed as villages to what Guyana is today. And we perhaps were lucky to have had the blessings of God that a man called Guyana happened to have lived in this village. Because his example spurred us to go beyond our limits so that today we can stand here 184 years after emancipation as a people who have survived the challenges that came with slavery. And we are here today to tell the story. Let us give thanks to Brother Yusuf. We are at a critical point in our history. Our country has undergone fundamental changes in just a matter of a few years. And perhaps we have not yet gotten accustomed to the kind of changes that are occurring in our society. And so we wanted this symposium to take cognizance of those changes and to begin to fashion our conversations bearing those changes in mind. Sometimes we tend to get ahead of ourselves in any society. Our motto, of course, is one people, one nation, one destiny. Brother Henry Jeffrey I said we are not a nation, and I want to endorse that. We are not one people. We are aspiring to be one people. We are aspiring to be one nation. We certainly don't have one destiny. And we have to be frank with ourselves. After 60 years of trying, we tried and we continue to try. Something is holding us back, or some things are holding us back. And I want to submit tonight that one of the things that is holding us back is that we have not settled the question of how we are going to distribute whatever common resources we have, whether it's political, economic, or cultural. I think there was a time in the first decade of independence when in Guyana, in Trinidad, in Barbados, all over the Caribbean, all over Africa, we grappled with this question of one nation. And we have to give credit to that generation of leaders who tried. But the odds were tremendous. You don't come out of slavery with no time to reflect on what slavery did to the psyche. And you plunge into colonialism and indentureship. And you come out of that at independence time, no time to reflect. And so we have an independence project without reflection. And so almost 60 years after independence, here we are, raising anew the very questions that were raised at independence time. I would say one of the things that we couldn't see at independence in our quest to pursue one nation, one destiny, and one people, is that we did not allow space for the individual peoples, the individual ethnic groups, to have their own conversation about their own history and their own destiny and their own nation. And so we, in a sense, became a kind of force-right nation, so that each ethnic group has no space to carry on its conversation. And what we are attempting to do here tonight is to open up that space for the conversations inside of our groups. What kind of society do we African Guyanese want to live in? What kind of political system we want? What kind of economic system we want? Because the economic system has to take into consideration our economic condition. And our economic condition is different from the economic condition of other ethnic groups. What kind of cultural aspects of the nation we want to give to the nation? We have not had time for that conversation. And so tonight, I am borrowing from my brother Winston to say the Buxton appeal this year should be an appeal for intra-group conversations on what they want Guyana to be. And when we are finished with those intra-group discussions, then we merge those discourses and we come up with what we want Guyana to look like jointly. And so that's the first thing I want to throw out. I want to endorse what my brothers have said, and that is, when people ask you to prove that you are unequal, when they ask you to prove political, economic, and racial discrimination, they're being scams. They're being scams. Because you can't prove racial discrimination, because racial discrimination is bound up in the system and in the institutions that come together to make the system. Let's take our police force, for example, as an example of what I'm talking about. The police force was formed in 1839. Any accident? What happened in 1838? Black people gained their freedom, formal freedom. So if you create a police force, immediately after they gained their freedom, you're creating a police force to police them. So when 184 years later we look at the police force policing black people, treating black people as if they were bounty, as if they were slaves, it is embedded in that history of what the police force was created for. So when you ask me to prove extrajudicial killing, that the police are intentionally killing young black men, I have to point you to 1838 and 1839. It is no accident that policemen and women don't go into the villages, communities of the other ethnic groups and shoot them down, because the police force was not created for that. And so therefore, unless a concerted effort is made to change the structures of the society, we black people will continue to be marginalized. So I want to add a couple of things by way of action, by way of solution. We have to immediately level the economic playing field. This can't wait until the PNC or the coalition get back to power. Because elections here is a toss-up, and elections in Guyana will not be determined going forward just by voters. We saw that in 2020. The 2020 election was not decided just by Guyanese voters. It was decided by several forces and several considerations. You know the story, I know the story, all of you know the story. So for us to, as African Guyanese, to put all our eggs and to gamble our future just in elections, we are making a grave mistake. I'm not saying elections are not important. You must have elections. But elections in Guyana, like everywhere, is a gamble. You flip a coin, and by the time the coin comes down, there are several forces are determining where that coin lands. It may land for you, representatives, today. It may land for the other representatives tomorrow. And we as African Guyanese cannot gamble our future. We have to make demands, and we have to stand up and ensure that those demands are met. Until and unless the economic playing field is leveled in Guyana, we will be crying and crying in the night. There are structural reasons that African Guyanese are left behind. Yes, we are behind in wealth, accumulated wealth. African Guyanese own less than 20% of the accumulated wealth. We are more than 20% of the population. It puts us at a disadvantage. I was intrigued by the statistics quoted by Mr. Jordan in terms of the public service and the decline in the public service, and how that decline is manifested in the economic condition of our people today. So we cannot settle for a hamper. We cannot settle for $20,000. We cannot settle for a little, what they call it now, part-time job. we have to settle for an equal playing field so we can have equal opportunity. What we don't have is equal opportunity. And we are only going to get that if we decide that we want it and we are going to struggle for it together. It means that we have to organize ourselves. We have to organize ourselves, of course, in our political parties. But more than that, we have to organize ourselves outside of our political parties so that we are covering all bases. So from this podium, I want to add to the Buxton appeal that Brother Winston talked about, the question of African people organizing themselves for a level playing field so that we can have equal opportunity. The next thing I would like to say, we have to be very clear. African Guyanese have given more to what we call Guyana than what we are getting from what we call Guyana. 200 and odd years working for nothing. The economists, and Winston and others, will calculate for us in today's money how much we are owed. The other groups are owed, but African Guyanese are owed the most. And so therefore, from this platform, I want to add to the Buxton appeal internal reparations for African Guyanese. So far, our reparations has been about getting money from the slave owners. And I endorse that. But I want to add internal reparations. The government of Guyana owes black people a lot of money. And if there was a time when the government could say, buy me broke, I know me owe you, but I don't have money to pay you. The government today cannot make that excuse. They have more money than they have ever had. So let them pay us. Reparations, internal reparations for Guyanese. And then finally, at the end of the day, what matters in any society is power. Power. The ability to distribute common resources. The authority to distribute common resources. The authority to get people to do things that they would not normally do. The authority to come in here, to send the police in here, and to say, you are a threat to the order of this society. We are closing to this country. We are closing down this meeting. That's power. And the government has the authority to access that power. The government has the authority to access how our resources are distributed. And so, unless you are at the table of power, you're wasting your time. African Guyanese should not be the opposition. How can you struggle and build a country and you are called opposition? No, you are not opposition. You are part, and you ought to be part of the power structures in this society. What is at stake in Guyana today is not government and inclusive this and inclusive that. What is at stake, I say, from this podium, in addition, in adding my piece to the Buxton appeal, is the question of power. And we African Guyanese have to we have to resolve here tonight that we are going to fight for power. However, that power is distributed. We have to have the power to decide what happens to us. No other group can decide for us what is good for us, what is good for Buxton, what is good for Golden Grove, what is good for Belladrum. Only we can decide that. And for us to decide that, we have to be at the table. And that is why I'm saying elections doesn't take us to the table all the time. When you lose an election, you're not at the table. And we have to create the kind of environment in this country that whether you lose an election or win an election, you will be at the table to determine decisions that affect your life. So that is my third contribution by way of solutions. We must have power to make decisions. Nothing that I said here tonight, or that my brothers said, and I assume Sister Mans is going to say, will happen tomorrow. It was our own Frederick Douglass, African-American abolitionist, who said, power concedes nothing without a demand. And if we're going to get power, we have to demand power. It means that we have to define for ourselves what we understand power to be. And don't let somebody else define power for us. We have to decide what our victimhood is. We have to decide what are the evidence. What is the evidence that we have? The evidence must not be to show somebody else. We must develop the evidence for ourselves. So I agree that ACTA and the Black organization should do a study on the state of African Guyanese, but they must do it for African Guyanese, not to evidence for other people. Other people know what they're doing. They already know. The oppressor always knows that he is oppressing. And so, sisters and brothers, I want to join with others and welcome you all here tonight. One of the things they're trying to get us to say, I will talk too much. Let me stop this talk and let's get action. One of our strongest points, one of our greatest contribution to this country is deliberation, intellectual deliberation. Our foreparents did not buy these lands. They just get up one morning, they plan, and they plan, and they talk, and they listen to Gangang, Picnic, Bush Gades Metelayu. They listen to Uncle Louis, who watched cross Orange Nassau, and said they get land over local land in God country. And we go buy it. And they plan, and they planned, and they planned. And 1834 came, and they didn't want to release of our parents, and they planned, and they planned. And then when August morning came in 1838, they walk out as triumphant people, knowing exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to buy land and create communities and civilize Guyana, and that's what they do. The challenge is still with us. And from this podium tonight, I want to say to you, the work may be hard, but we've got to organize and get ourselves out of this mess that people are trying to put us back in.
Money,